right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. Today we have MarKeisha with us, and she is a homeschool mom. You want to start by introducing yourself?
Yes. Thank you for having me. Well, first thing first, my name is MarKeisha. I am happily married to my college sweetheart of 8 years. Yes. I'm a stay-at-home mom and I'm also a homeschool mom. But more importantly, I am a follower of Christ. I always have to acknowledge that because that's my true identity. But
Yeah,
I am just glad to be here today.
awesome. Thanks so much for being here. Again, like the whole purpose of doing this podcast is really to just shed some light on the African American community and those of us who are homeschooling or have our hand in that community in some type of way. I think it's important that people are able to, see us and know about the opportunity that's there, alternative education options, and then also just how we do it. A lot of people are interested in like how, like how does this make sense? So before we get into the how, just what led you to start homeschooling, or did you like start just from the jump, or how did that turn out?
That's such a great question because my homeschooling journey is so different from like most homeschool moms.
Hmm.
I have always been a stay-at-home mom my son's whole life. He just turned 7, but I've been a stay-at-home mom his whole life. And before he started pre-K, I was teaching him. I was his teacher, you know. That's also my field. I majored in child development, got a degree in child development. So I was always his teacher, and then he went off to pre-K. And then when he went off to pre-K and he went off to pre-K, I started to go back to the workforce. So I actually started teaching pre-K at a different school, which is so funny because he was not in my school. But
Right.
after that, we had moved to Florida and he was in kindergarten.
Mhm.
And it's so funny how I became a homeschool parent, like full-time homeschool parent, because I didn't have it on my radar. Now, when he was in the kindergarten, back at the school, I would feel left out. Like I would feel like, man, I'm missing the teacher, parent, teacher conferences because I was working at school as well. And my
Right.
husband had to do everything, but I never just petitioned to be a homeschool mom full time. But it wasn't until my son was having some difficulties in school, and I noticed that when he would come home, he was like a different kid,
Mhm.
and I didn't know what was going on. He was more aggressive, and it just didn't seem like he was happy.
Mhm.
And there was a lady at our church, have never met me or my husband. She came to us and she had gave us a word from the Lord, and she said, God wants y'all to take him out of school.
Oh my God.
Yes. And we were just like, I was crying. I was just amazed because I was like, man, she don't know anything that's going on with the school and what we've been
Mhm.
dealing with, but she confirmed everything we were feeling. And it was a scary thing for me because I was like, God, how are we gonna do this? We don't have no family in town. I am a homeschool mom. This is my obviously my field, but I am a first generation homeschool mom. Like
Yeah.
there's no rule books to this. I've never just did this thing full time.
Yeah.
So just being obedient, walked out on faith and pulled him out last year. He didn't even get a chance to finish his whole second half of his kindergarten year. Pulled him
Mhm.
out and I said, okay, let's do this. So that's kind of how we started.
I love that. Like, I literally got chills listening to you because that is crazy for somebody who didn't even know your story to walk up and tell you that. But I also want to name that, like, as a parent, I love how you said, like, he wasn't happy because I
Mm-hmm.
think that a lot of times, like, we forget that that's important for kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I should be paying attention to how they're feeling. And like, if you're not happy and I can contribute to that, then I need to do something about that. I think that that's so important that you name that and like that you were paying attention to that like emotional regulation in him and being like,
Yeah.
you're not a bad kid. Like when people
No.
say like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
the teachers love to label little black boys aggressive and like actually you're probably just not happy in the environment that you're
Yep.
in. And so being that you guys were able to do that obviously is a blessing, and you having your background in education is even more, like confirming that you were able to like see that, notice that, and then do something about it, which kind of leads into the next question, which was about your parenting style. So, like, what is your personal parenting style? I know you're married, so do you and your husband have the same parenting style? And then how does that like influence into like the homeschooling world? And I'll just preface that question with saying like I think that for me, at least in my own homeschool experience, sometimes you have to kind of put on your teacher hat and then you take it off and you put on your mommy hat. And sometimes it's like, ooh, am I giving too much mommy right now? Or like you don't want school to interfere with like your personal relationship with your kids. But even being on social media and seeing what other homeschool alumni, I guess we can call them, would say is like, it was hard for me to separate the two. So just
Yeah.
again, how can you speak to like your current experience with that?
Damica, I'm just like you, honestly. I believe, and just to give my transparent truth, it sometimes is a challenge
Mm-hmm.
separating the two because they blend, right?
Yep.
Like I'm always going to be mom, but then I also have to have this teacher here. I need you to take me serious.
Yeah.
I think that the challenge for me comes in where because I worked in the school system, okay?
Yeah.
I've been them kids' mama before too, but I
Exactly.
wasn't their biological mom. So I think that the challenge for me comes in where I want what's best for my son because he's my son, right? And something my husband told me, he was like, that grace that you have to give other people kids at that school, you got
You
to
gotta
bring
do
that
it with
home.
y'all.
So that's something that I personally have found to be the challenge to separate it, right? You're not just mom. See, mom she gonna get on you a little bit and she gonna, make sure you're doing right. But you're
Yeah.
also teacher. So it's like making sure that in the classroom, I was giving grace. I was being patient, right? Because them y'all kids. I was
Right.
being patient. I was giving grace, really bringing that back to my home, like, because although I'm passionate, I want him to learn. I also have to give him space and the grace to learn, just like I would do if I was clocking in, okay? A 9 to 5.
Yep. Yep.
So I would say my parenting style, I'm not really a gentle parent, although I am I practice, being gentle with him. I practice self-control, but I would say I am more of an intentional parent
Yep.
slash structured parent slash
Yep.
giving grace parent. I'm all of it.
It's a combo piece. I
I'm
feel
a
that.
combo.
I really feel that. And I love, I think that that's something that is important to name with any homeschool mom, because I think that's something that we probably all struggle with. Is like, you have different expectations for your own child. It's like, I know you can do it because you know what
Uh-huh.
they made of, right? So it's like, I don't know what these other kids are made of when I go into this classroom, but I know what you made of. And you're not about to give
That's
up, or
right.
you're not about to not work hard. And you can see, I think the hard part about having an education background is like, you can see what happens when
Mm-hmm.
they don't. And so it's like, I really need you to get this because I know what this looks like if you don't get it
Yes.
come 10 or 15. And I've worked in collegiate, so I know what it looks like
Mm-hmm.
at the college level when kids don't know how to write correctly, like a proper sentence with a
Yeah.
period. So, what would you say a typical homeschool day looks like for you?
That's a really great question because I know that this differs for different homeschool moms. But for me, the first thing I try to implement in the morning, okay, breakfast, obviously, but then before we do any type of curriculum, any type of concepts, we are going to do devotion, right?
Love that.
We're going to spend time in the word together. I have like verses on my little whiteboard
Mm-hmm.
that we go over, we talk about it, we discuss it, we pray, and just really modeling that because it was a time when I first started homeschooling where my long time with God was my long time with God, but then
Yeah.
I believe the Holy Spirit wanted me to invite him into those spaces as well. Like, no, you model that, right? So me modeling that, just reading my Bible, and then I do some verses with him and we just talk about it, and then we do kind of like a mental health check, like how we feeling today. I gotta know how we feeling today, or just kind of check
Yeah.
the room because every day is not gonna be the easiest day. And if
Yeah.
I see you already like really whiny and kind of like
Yeah.
a little bit reserved and give me some pushback in the beginning, I kind of know how I structure them. Even if I have a
Yeah.
whole lesson planned out, I will reroute my day.
Yeah.
Let's go outside first. Let's go walking first, and then we'll come back in, and typically he'll feel better, and we'll go right into like our curriculum, or our whatever we're doing for that day. But I think every day like differs for us, because just like I have good days, he have good days, but he also have bad days. So I have to kind of just read the room and
That's
see
so
what
good.
day it is.
That's so good. I think, again, this is something that's important to be heard because, especially, again, coming from an education background
Mm-hmm.
and you thinking about the way that the day goes in a typical school,
Yes.
you don't get to account for a student having a bad day
No, you.
or, not enough.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being in the classroom and like kids would have deaths in the family. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, we still got to get lesson blah 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 done. Like,
Yeah.
unfortunately, because
Yeah.
that's the way that school is structured. But the great thing about being a homeschool parent is you do get to say, you know what, you're not feeling too great today, let's go
Mm-hmm.
outside and just draw on the sidewalk with some chalk,
That's
because
it.
you don't have nobody over your head saying this assessment is coming up, or
Mm-hmm.
standing in your classroom watching over your shoulder. And I think for a lot of us who come from education backgrounds, it feels awkward at
It
first, but
does.
it's so rewarding in the end when you're able
Mm-hmm.
to, like, just like you said, it doesn't even have to, you don't have to throw the whole day away, but you can
Mm-mm.
give an hour in the morning to that walk, and now all of a sudden your lesson or whatever you have planned is going so much better. So
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that you start with devotion and bringing your son into that world, because that's so beautiful. I think we always talk about like modeling when it comes to social emotional
Yeah.
things, or, other things within society, and modeling the way that they're supposed to do it. But I think, their relationship with God is also important to model. So I love that you're doing that.
Yeah.
So do you use an actual curriculum? Do you kind of come up with your own? Do you kind of piece stuff together? How do
Mm-hmm.
you go about that?
So in the beginning, I'm gonna just be real with you. I thought, because, oh girl, I am an educator, okay? I'm gonna come up with my own curriculum. You're gonna do this. That didn't last long at all. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I found myself like stressed, like trying to put together all my different pieces. So what
Mhm.
I do, I use this curriculum called Christian Light Education.
Okay.
I found it online. Pretty so much so far so good.
Yeah.
But I like it because it gives us a teacher guide, right? So I can teach from the guide, and then it has like, it's like mastery. Like you see them start them off small, but then they like, you can kind of tell that they have built the curriculum for them to like excel.
Actually get it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I love it because it's one of those things where, for the state of Florida at least, I know every homeschool, they have rules and every state is different, but for the state of Florida we have to have a yearly evaluation.
Okay.
So I'm able to keep those little booklets we do throughout the year, and I'm able to present it, and check it off. So it's easy to keep up with that work instead of having like loose worksheet papers. It's just
Yes.
easy to keep it in one place. So it's called Christian Light Education. I like it so far. It's pretty good.
I love that. And I think that, again, so important to name that, like, there are resources out there.
That's it.
It's as simple as like a Google search, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can find a resource that fits you. And then, like you said, you like it so far. There could come a time where you're like, I want to use something else. You know what I'm saying? And you have
Mm-hmm.
the freedom to do that. And I think, like, again, having that education background, like, we get so locked in with something, but homeschooling really opens up that world to say, like, you can grab this, you can use this, you can use a little bit of everything. My kids are actually like technically still preschool age, so we haven't even gotten into like the nitty gritty stuff.
Right.
But, like you said, I was just sitting here thinking about how many loose leaf papers I have. I'm just like, whoa, that might be something I need to look into, because I'm always thinking, I actually look at like the year ahead for them and try
Mm-hmm.
to
Same.
prepare accordingly based. And I love how you mentioned your state, because every state has different regulations and requirements for homeschooling. Um, I think Tennessee is one of the more lighter ones. Like, they're not too concerned about what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
but I still try to keep like documentation just in
Mm-hmm.
case those laws and regulations ever change. So I love that you named that. I kind of want to switch gears a little bit and ask, like, when you made this decision, I know you said you're not around friends and family, but like, how was that reaction when you said like he ain't going to school no more?
That's really a great question. I believe that most people took it well, but I do want to acknowledge like some of the comments I've heard over time that I'm sure every homeschool mom has heard or will hear. And that is, girl, how you gonna make sure he's not awkward? How he gonna do around people? How are you gonna make sure he's social?
Yeah.
And in that comment, it's a real question. That's a real comment.
It's cringy.
It's very cringy. But here's my soft and gentle reminder. Is that us, Black children who went to public school, we spent our whole life in public school, right? But we were never taught how to be social. Some of us, not myself, but some of us are introverted, right? But I have cousins who don't even deal with people because they were just they went to school their whole life, but you couldn't tell, right? Yeah. And then you have my son, when he goes to the playground, hello, my name is Ivy, want to play? Do you want to be friends? Like he's a social butterfly. He has no, look, I want to play with you. You want to play with me? Let's play. And it's amazing to see him just be in that element, because that's what I hear the most. Girl, how you gonna make sure that he's not like, awkwardly, like socially awkward, or how you gonna make sure he wants to know and play with people? I'm like, he got it. Like I make sure that I take him to the parks. I make sure that I take him places where he's around children still, at least. But then I think the most important thing for me is like giving him a space to be himself, giving him a space to learn how to communicate, So it's not like he's just in this box and we just lock him up in the room.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you said that, because I think that's kind of the old school taboo like way of thinking. It's like, okay, if you're homeschooled, like you don't come out the house and you only know your immediate family. And I think that I love that your son is like extroverted, but I love the fact that you named that. Like that has nothing to do with, I think some people just have like an introverted personality, or some people just have like an extroverted personality. And I think as parents, like it's our job to guide them. But if you notice that you have like a shyer kid, they're shy if they go to public school too. Like it doesn't really change that. And I think that being a teacher, again, that socialization within the school system
is different. Yeah.
It's very different. It's very controlled. You have certain times of the day where it's just you just can't talk right now. Like we're trying to get through it. And then you have certain times of the day where it's like you're in a small group, or you have 15 minutes of recess. Like school isn't as socialized as people try to make it seem.
It's not.
And so, like you said, like taking the kids to the park, I think, I've noticed the same things. Like they're more interested in like, okay, this kid has this vibe, and then they ask questions. So we'll get home and be like, this kid was doing that, or this kid was talking like this, like, and then we can have like really open question and answer sessions where we can dive into those conversations that you don't really get to have when you send your kid to a school that might not be as diverse, or whatever the case may be. We've had conversations with our son about like he walked up to a kid and told him he liked his jacket because it was a dinosaur jacket, but the kid didn't speak English, so he was just looking at him like, what? And he was so offended, like his feelings was hurt. But we had to come home and have a conversation about like different people speak different languages, and that's not really a conversation you have at public school. You just kind of learn to go with the flow. So, I love that you named that. It really it has a lot to do with personality type. My daughter, she was born in 2020, pandemic baby. She's not for the people, but she's not for any people, like adults, kids. Like she just really reserved into herself. And I started feeling like, oh, she might be like this because I'm homeschooling her. And then she got into ballet or got into these activities, and she was still like, nah, I just don't mess with people. And so, I just had to give that to her. Like we have conversations about like why it's important to speak when spoken to, or whatever the case may be. But I'm also not going to make you into something you're not. And I don't think that it has anything to do with like her being homeschooled because she's
Absolutely.
in activity, she's out and social. And I think that, most of the time we talk about socializing kids and people talking about them being awkward, but the kids in school are awkward.
They're awkward.
Like
Yeah.
they're weird.
Like my son personally, we went to the playground. I told you like he typically goes to children. I don't have to tell him now. I sometimes I have to like kind of push him like, okay,
Push them.
go, go talk. But for the most part, when he would do that, I would notice that the children that would be there from the public school setting, that they were kind of reserved. They're like, why he just
Yeah.
walking up to us? They were like,
Yeah.
it was awkward for them to see someone so confident to walk up to them. So I think that my challenge has also been within that is really finding my space, right? Because we have not, we only been homeschooling now for a year. We made our 1 year, I believe, this year.
Yay.
Yeah, girl, it's been a journey, but we're still looking towards finding a good co-op. And many people have different feelings about this, but personally, I want to find a space where my son doesn't have to, what do you call it, like force himself in, right? I
Yeah.
want to be able to find a space where it's open, because
Yeah.
sometimes when you have different co-ops, they be kind of clicked up, and
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to get in there. So we've been just like doing the main things, going to the park, going here, going there. And I just believe that, God will allow me to find that space. And that's just
Yes.
like for any homeschool mom, because there may be a homeschool mom that say, hey, I haven't found the perfect co-op. It doesn't mean that you're doing the wrong thing. Some things just take time,
Yep.
just finding things and learning resources and seeing what's out there. So
I love that you named that because I was kind of having not the same, but kind of a similar thoughts. Is like I want to be a part of something like a co-op, and then I've been doing my research about the area, and I just found that like those are few and far between or really far away, and I just made the decision that like I'm gonna start one myself. Like
that's it.
and it's just like if like, and that's the great thing about homeschooling is you kind of get to curate your own experience and you get to
Yes.
say like, I don't think this is gonna work for us because when you're a homeschool mom, like it's a team. Like it's like I'm looking out for my kid, but I also gotta protect my energy and my space and
Yes.
who I want to be around too,
That's right.
because all of that impacts their experience. Like if you're feeling awkward, they're gonna be feeling awkward. If you're feeling
Yeah.
tension, like they feel all of that, and kids are the greatest like readers of energy. So like
Mm-hmm.
you said, just again take your time and fill it out, and I
Fill
feel
it
like
out.
you'll find what's right for you, and continue to pray on it. It'll
Mm-hmm.
fall into your lap, those type of things.
Or like you, I was thinking also about creating my own space as well. So like
Mhm.
that's something I feel like we have in common. It's like
Yeah.
sometimes if you can't fit in, make it, or you
Yep.
can't find something, create it. So
Created.
yeah, I've
Yep.
been thinking about that.
Yeah, I love that. If you want to collab at any point or talk through some ideas, I'm here for it because I'm still like working through. I think I'm gonna start mine as like a summer little
Yeah,
program and see how they, mesh, and then if it works, we might continue it through the school year. I don't know, but
love that.
um, we are down to the final question. I feel like we just been talking, but the last question is just what advice would you give to a parent who is considering homeschooling? I think that especially coming from like if you're pulling your kid out of school, that can
Mhm.
be very overwhelming. If you're just thinking about it and you have a newborn, it can still feel like a lot. And it's so much information out there. But I don't think it's well organized. I don't think it's
Mhm.
I just don't. When I was going through my experience and like think, like I knew once I started teaching, I didn't want my kids to be in the school system. But then once I actually had my kid, I was like,
Mhm.
we might send her to school. Like this seemed like a lot. And I was just looking for my people. And that's why I'm, starting these type of conversations because they can give you like conversations like this can give you so much peace and so much validation that you might not know that you need. So just what would your advice be?
Yeah. So, especially if you're a religious person, I would say definitely pray. Because one thing about it, I had a desire in my heart, but I didn't even know if that was my desire or that was God's desire. I just said one day, like, man, it'd be nice to be home with him more, and I believe that God honored that, but also I believe it was his desire for me to pull him out. So that's my first thing. I'm always going to say, like, go to God about it, pray about it, but then right after that, know your why. Because I will say your why is the most important thing in this process. Because if your why is because you want to shelter your children, or if your why is because you want to hide them from the world, you may have to reevaluate your why. Like making sure you know your why, because even on hard days, when you get into it, you'll find out that your why will be the thing that will like push you to keep going. For me personally, my why was I wanted to make sure my little brown boy had the best education. I wanted to make sure that he had an opportunity to be in a space where he was actually learning, so really knowing your why. Like if your why is you want to spend more time with your children, that's beautiful. So on those hard days, you'll be able to say, man, I did this so that I can have more time. I literally earn more time back with my children. So knowing your why, and then at the end of the day, is no rule books to this. Like come in this thing with grace for your child, but then also coming into this thing with grace for yourself, like grace over perfection. You don't have to look like every homeschool, because I had that problem. Like, well, do the other homeschool moms have days like us? Because I just feel like he's just not getting it. He falling on the floor. We're at odds. But I believe that, not comparing yourself to what you see on social media, and just find your rhythm. Find what works for you, because what if the book work right now don't work for you, and you have to find other ways. Another thing I would say is that knowing your child and knowing what learner he is, like finding time to learn your children. Although we may say as parents, I know my kids. You know them until you're in this setting. You're like, wait, I don't even know you because I thought you liked this. So I will also say, knowing what kind of learner you have. Because if you have a learner who has to thrive around other children, they have to be in a group setting. You may want to explore options of getting into co-ops, right? But if you have a learner who kind of reserved, homeschooling and being in your own little personal space may be the best thing as well. So knowing your why, consulting God, knowing what kind of learning you have, and then really just taking this thing one day at a time. Because when you are first generation homeschool parents like ourselves, nobody giving you tips. Nobody giving you advice. Nobody is giving you pointers, right? So it's like you're really doing this thing and learning with your children. So you gotta come in this thing with humility and grace. And connect with other moms, find other homeschool moms who are doing the things you're doing. It may be different, but hey, y'all can bounce off on each other and really give each other pointers, So that's what I would tell them.
You drop so many gems. Like I'm just like, yes, because all of that is so important. I love that advice. I second all of that. I love specifically how you say like we're learning too, because that homeschool experience does kind of put you in a place where it's like, dang, now I have to be social too. Like I gotta model how to go up and talk to a stranger or whatever. Like you gotta think like I think that while it is a transitional experience, like y'all are literally growing together, and because you have to pay so much attention to your child, you have to pay attention to yourself because, like you said, I'm modeling the behavior that I want. Like being present means that they're looking to me for that guidance of what daily interactions look like. Like, I think for me, I realized so much how much of a sponge our kids were because the way we talk to each other around the house, they talking to each other in their own room, like just picking up on how kids are so observant. They're paying attention to the energy. And then, like you said, knowing what type of learner they are. Most kids start off as like visual. And so they're taking in everything they see and they're asking questions about the things that they see first. And so I just love that. You dropped so many gems. I think that any homeschool mom needs some type of community. I think that's the hardest part about
Hard
being a
part.
homeschool mom, especially like you said, first generation. Because I call my mom and she'd be like, I don't know, girl, send her to school. And then, other days I call her and she be like, nah, she can't go to school. Like because my mom has even said, like, if I knew then what I know now, I probably
Mhm.
would have homeschooled my kids, or I probably would have stayed at home with my kids. And so I think it's a
Wow.
beautiful thing to be able to do that. Obviously it's a blessing to even financially be able to do it, to be a stay-at-home mom in general. And then, you think about those dynamics, because we, again, can get so caught up in the day to day hustle and bustle, gotta cook dinner, gotta, do all of these things. But there are moments where I just be like, I'm just sitting in y'all room and watch y'all play. And most people don't get to do that with their kids. Most people don't get to have that experience. And, before was even working from home, I would homeschool after work. Like I would get home and be like,
Mm.
all right, we learning today, but that alone created a different dynamic in
Mhm.
the relationship that I had with my kids. And I think that most people, you know, because of life, I'm not, mom shaming or anything, but I think that
Right.
because of life, like we don't get to learn our kids. We don't get to spend
Mhm.
that 20 minutes reading to your child and see the type of questions that they're asking. I tell people all the time, I watch my daughter play with her dolls, and that's how I see her, idea of what the world is, like just by the way that she plays. And so, like you said, knowing who your kid is, all of that just comes from a little time and observation. And most people don't have it to give. But if you do, even if you're not considering homeschool, I think it's very important to just carve out some time, because kids change fast. Like
Yes, they do.
one day they like dinosaurs, and then it's like, no, I completely love turtles. What are you talking about? Dinosaurs are of the past. And it's like, what? This is just yesterday. My daughter talks about things as if it was just so long ago. Like, remember when I used to like Minnie Mouse?
Yeah.
I'm like, girl, you're five. Like,
Right.
but that's how quickly they change and evolve. And
Mhm.
we do the same thing. Like
Yep.
we like stuff one day, don't the next.
Mm-mm.
And so it's important that we spend that time. But I just want to, thank you for carving out the time to chat with me. I love how, this conversation just flowed. Feel like we've been friends for years
Right.
already. And I just want to let you know that, like, again, if you need a resource, you need to just vent, like, I'm here for that. I appreciate you sharing your story, because it's important. It's going to impact somebody. Somebody been thinking about homeschooling, and they gonna watch this video and be like, this is my confirmation. You know what I'm saying? And that's the only reason that, I do this, is to shed some light on the fact that it's possible. Like you said, you've only been doing it a year. My kids are 4 and 5. Like, we fresh in this, So I think that, knowing that we can give ourselves grace and have these type of conversations for people to kind of just absorb and learn from, I think is very important. So again, I appreciate you. You have such a beautiful
Yeah.
spirit.
Thank
Your son is so blessed to have an amazing mom like you, who, saw him for who he was, and made a choice and stood on it. So I definitely appreciate your time. I don't
Yeah.
know if you have any last thoughts or comments.
I do. I want to say thank you for creating this space, because I'm gonna be honest with you. When I first started off last year, I was looking for stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
I was looking for someone to be open to speak about their challenges, to speak about like their stories of their journey. And I didn't see a lot of it. But I am grateful that you gave me the opportunity to speak on your platform, because I do believe that it's a lot of us out here. I believe it's a lot of us. I just don't believe that we have these spaces to be able to speak, or at least I haven't been able to witness it. So
Yeah.
thank you for being able to share a platform to shed light. I love what you're doing. I just love what you're doing, and just keep going. And the same for me. Like, if you want to ever connect again, I am also a resource. Okay. I believe us homeschool moms definitely to stick together, and
Gotta stick together.
we gotta do this thing. We gotta look. It don't come with no book, but you're gonna figure it out.
Yes, yes. So I appreciate you. I'm gonna let you get back to your Saturday. I hope you enjoy your weekend. Again, it was a pleasure speaking with you. And if you need anything, like, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.